Pain that we bear on a daily basis is no joke. While we complain a bit more, we are never exaggerating what we go through. Since the internet and the experts suggest us to move frequently and often, it's always easy said than done. Hi everybody, this is Himanshika and today I am presenting Dr. Bhavna in my first ever podcast. She's a physiotherapist, a Pilates instructor, and specializes in chronic pain, especially in women. Let's talk to her about the problems chronic patients face on a daily basis and get some tips to deal with. Hi Bhavna, how are you?
Hi Himanshika, I'm good. How are you?
I am good. First of all, thank you very much for agreeing to come on my channel and talk about this issue here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invite. I'm looking forward to giving much information which is needed right now.
Yeah. So, first of all, before anything else, I want to ask you the importance that physiotherapy plays in chronic illness, because there are a lot of people who actually doubt all of this training process because it doesn't yield much of results for them. So, what exactly does physiotherapy do in chronic pain?
Right. So physiotherapy plays a very major role in chronic illness, especially in chronic illness like rheumatoid arthritis, when they're confined to joints, and in illnesses where there's pain. So we use a lot of techniques and therapies, first to control the pain and to promote the movement and to make that person physically abled.
Okay.
So in terms of pain, we use pain relieving modalities like TENS, and we advise them when to put a hot or a cold pack.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of managing the joint disability, we give them certain exercises and we do certain mobilizations to free the movement.
Mm-hmm.
And we also help them by giving them home exercise programs to continue.
Okay. All right. So, since you prefer doing therapies manually, what is the difference between doing a therapy with machines and doing it manually?
Yeah, so both have their own importance. Doing with machines, there are various machines to control pain or to reduce the inflammation.
Okay.
And coming to manual therapy, so we are focusing more on giving mechanical movement to the joint and also to activate or, to deactivate the muscles. So in to manage pain, there is a machine called as TENS, which helps in controlling the pain, and there's a machine called as ultrasound, which helps in inflammation. But in manual therapy, we focus on the muscle activity. If the muscles are tighter, which is very common in rheumatoid arthritis, people with pain tend to get into deformity. So we help in stretching those muscles or mobilizing the joints specifically.
So, in the past few years, I have experienced a variety of physiotherapists and how they work, okay? And some of them do prefer working with machines and some of them do prefer working manually. But I didn't experience any of the difference between these two. Do you think that machines only work on certain people who have their diseases aggravated to an extent? Or
Right. So
does that...
the first thing... the assessment is very important before we jump into doing any treatment. And also, physiotherapy is not the whole treatment. It is more like an adjunct. So the medications are very important. So depending on the type of medications that you are going through, alongside physiotherapy plays a vital role.
Okay.
So while we are doing the assessment, it is more important for us to know whether this patient is in an acute phase or is in chronic phase. And also, it is very important for us to know whether they have come up with flare-ups. So even in rheumatoid arthritis, there are times that they get flare-ups. So depending on what is their present scenario, we are supposed to take a call as to use an electrical modality to first handle the pain or to eventually do something more to the muscles and the joints. So that the therapist has to take a call. Also, it has to be conveyed to the patient as to what the treatment protocol has to be like.
Okay.
If the person is coming with an acute pain or with an immediate flare-up, So at that point of time, it is more important for us to manage the pain because the pain is intolerable. So I would always preferably resort to using machines to handle the management of the pain. If the person is coming with chronic pain, or if they have been taking therapy and there is a lot of restriction in their joint, then I would be handling with mobilizing their joint or giving them relaxation techniques to the joint or strength and conditioning to the muscle and the body overall.
Okay. So actually, but the thing is, when there are people who are in bad flare-ups and they are dealing with really grave or unbearable pain on a daily basis, it becomes really difficult for them to make up their mind to move themselves, right? They
Yes.
become lethargic, they become non-movable, and there are so many things that keep going through their mind. How do you deal with such people who don't have enough motivation to come to you or even sought online help from you to move their joints?
Yes, that's a good question actually. So, yes, not all days are good and not all days are bad. There are days in between, but sometimes it takes a lot toll on the mental health. So, most of them are dealing with chronic pain. They tend to get bored with the same therapy as well. So, it is very important to have an interactive and integrated session. So, like, let's say there is this chronic patient who's been coming us for months. We should ensure that more than physical therapy, the home exercise program is very important. So, we come up with our questionnaires with goals set accordingly. So, whenever they have completed something and we, give a scoring to that person, they are motivated to do more. So let's say if they are doing certain activities, like somebody with a joint deformity in the hand is not able to pick certain things, our goal is to do, or like let's say let's pick up a glass from one place to the other. That can also be very tasking for a person. So if that would be a goal, and if that person, if you're telling them that we will follow up with doing this task, that will be more motivated.
Yeah.
So as a physical therapist, it's not just handling pain or doing movements. It's also a lot to do by understanding that person's psychology to see how much motivated or driven they are, and based on that we take a call as to how interactive or integrated the session has to be.
Okay.
And according to your question, if the person who'd been coming to us is severely, not motivated to get out of the bed, it is okay. There are gloomy days. It is okay to refrain a session at that moment, but it is also okay for us to do an online therapy where they don't have to come to the center, and we can only ask them to do certain movements where we are monitoring them. So the therapists are also alongside. We need to keep the rheumatologist or the orthopedician in loop and have a discussion with them to understand why there's a flare-up and if there's any medication where they can increase or handle with the dosages accordingly.
All right.
Yeah.
So talking about psychology, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, you know that that this disease generally occur in small children, right? That
Yes.
they are around 3 years old, 4 years old. I myself got this disease when I was 3 years old, and I didn't even know what is happening to me. And most of the times, even parents are clueless of how to handle their child. People from
Right.
all sorts of sides and corners and relatives used to come to my parents to suggest them what they should do with me. And my parents also tried the same things. But I still remember it vaguely that there were times when they used to push me to therapy or to take me to exercise centers, and I didn't want to go because of the pain that I used to experience at that point of time. So how do you handle children and how do you handle adults? Like they have different psychologies. How do you deal with children who are in chronic pain and don't want to exercise at all?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Yeah, the therapy is very different from what we do to adults and what we do to children. It's more easier for us to explain what exactly is going on in your body to an adult, and the reciprocation is better amongst an adult to the therapist. But coming to children, they are still vulnerable, they are fearful, they're anxious,
Yeah.
And also they have no clue as to what this disease is specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
So we will not say therapy for the kid, especially most. We would usually put them as a play form or and a play therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not basically like a medical therapy. We allow the child to get into a playful atmosphere. We don't catch hold of the child and do rigorous stretches. We do stretches in a way that the child finds it fun as well. So let's say if the child has started developing arthritis starting with their fingers or their legs. So a play form where you're asking the child to draw certain things on a sandboard or making a clay dough, making different shapes out of the clay dough, which can help in giving functional movement. So the basic notion of therapy is to allow the person to regain their strength and get back to their usual activity.
Yeah.
So the usual activities may not just confine to just stretching the body randomly, but getting into functional activities like picking up things. That is what is more important. So we allow the child to pick up rings and stack it into the ring stacker. So there are many things which is in a play form, and allowing them to walk on a foam board so that they get their balance, so that they move their lower joints and stuff like that. And sometimes we introduce a pool therapy also to both the segments for a child and an adult. But children find it more playful because it's water. Every child likes water. So hydrotherapy that way helps them in relaxing the load on the joint, and we allow them to walk in the pool so that they find it fun. So the therapy is not very stringent in children. It's more like a play form therapy. I think that should make a difference. The environment around the child should be more child friendly so that they look forward to take sessions, and the fear in them should be taken out, rather make it more interactive and fun.
Oh my God, I never got such a physiotherapist in my childhood.
Well, in India it is still upcoming, but soon there
so
will be
again, see, I never got such a physiotherapist in my childhood, and I never had that kind of environment where it would be everything would be playful and all. So what tips would you like to give to parents who are unable to find such a playful environment for their children, so that they can create that environment in their own homes and motivate their child to do some of the other physical activity at home? What are those physical activities that children can do easily at their homes?
Right. So I would say there's nothing like home therapy in the sense whatever treatment that an adult or a child comes to physical therapy centers is just for a limited period of time or for a brief period.
Okay.
The main amount of time that they spend is at home. So it is very important as a physical therapist, or sometimes there are people called as occupational therapists, to make sure that the person or the patient is blending certain activities back at home as well. So if we have to take the scenario, Indian scenario, like if the child is having issues with moving their palms or their fingers, we make chapatis, we make atta. So allowing the children to make a dough by itself is very playful. Allowing the children to make a dough or making figures out of the dough is very playful for them. And making the child walk on stack of pillows put linearly. So that will also help them with, like handling the movement in their joints. And coming to the management of the pain, the basic things like cold pack and hot pack, the education should be given by the physical therapist as to how and when to be done. And basically, when the child is coming to the rehabilitation center, they're always accompanied by somebody who also follows the same exercises back home.
Okay.
So as in when we are making the child do certain activities, we involve the mother or the father or whoever is attending the child back home to learn the same activities and make them do the same thing back home. So doing things with spoon or stacking blocks at home. There are various toys which are available, in shops or online where the child can, needling into a thread, thread into a needle and things like that. So these kind of interactive sessions can be done, and it is possible everywhere. It's just how the therapist is communicating to the child's family, and what kind of an atmosphere is necessary is what the therapist should be conveying it to them. And sometimes a video call to see what kind of a play atmosphere or on-site therapy can make a major effect on the child also that way.
All right. So I was actually 3 years old when I got this disease, right? And it took me or it took my parents around 7 to 8 years for the diagnosis. And by then the disease had already spread to certain joints. But still, they didn't stop my physical therapy at that point of time. Despite going to the physiotherapy every day, I started developing deformities in my joints, and I'm sure there are so many other people who have experienced the same thing. In fact, I read an experience of a woman whose child had got JRA at a very tender age, and she used to push her child through physiotherapy. Despite that, the child developed some hand deformities and all. So how does that happen? Like, if we are consistently moving ourselves, okay, there is physical therapy. Even if there is no physical therapy, even if the person is walking every day or doing the daily chores normally, then how does the deformity come up?
Right, good question. So likewise, the diagnosis is a very important thing. The moment we diagnose is when the doctor will decide as to what medication has to be given, which is ideal for that body type. So that plays an important role, but most of the diseases are very tricky and it is very difficult to identify as well. So that's when specialists intervene. So ideally, depending on the, so rheumatoid arthritis is one of the disease which causes inflammation in the joint, but there are many other diseases likewise which can cause inflammation in the joints. So there's something called as differential diagnosis where the doctor should be very apt at or very knowledgeable about it. So getting into that diagnosis is very important. Alongside the medication, the quick act on medications and the right medications is very important. So again, with the medication, some people can tolerate the medication and some people cannot. So by the time when we do all of these things, the severity of the disease can vary. So like, let's say we started with grade 1 of rheumatoid arthritis or class 1 of rheumatoid arthritis. By the time we are still not sure as to what is happening, we might land up to class 3. So the severity, the functional ability of the person depends on what severity they can get into. So that is very unpredictable. Yes, it is very tasking when somebody is doing their physical therapy, doing all their activities, but still end up with deformity. So that depends on the severity of the disease and the medicine which is being followed through. But however,
I mean, exactly, that's my point. Like, when I started with this disease, even though the proper diagnosis was not there, I was on medication, right? Even though it was not proper. Like, there are so many people who don't know what medicine would suit them instantly. It takes them years altogether to find that one combination that would suit them. And by then, their entire body is deformed. Like what happened with me. I took medicines and almost all my life, but the point was the way we went wrong was that it was not a right set of medicine for me, and it caused a havoc in my body. And now when I have found a certain combination, I still don't know whether it's good for me or not, whether it will help me or not, right? And it's still continuing. The disease is spreading, or maybe it is halted, I have no idea. But then what will people do? Like, when they don't know what is going on with them, they don't know whether the medicine will help them or not, then how can they keep themselves moving and stop the deformity from happening?
So the deformity from happening, it depends on the amount of physical therapy. Again, with physiotherapy, there's something about how much to push a person. When the body is not responding to the therapy, we need to look into an alternative form as to how the body needs to respond. That's when a holistic approach needs to be done. So sometimes it's not just physical therapy. We need to take help from an occupational therapist. We need to take help from a nutritionist. We need to take help from the rheumatologist to see if these medications are in combination with whatever sessions we are doing. So this holistic approach is very important for us to follow through. And coming to the deformity part, like I said, the severity, some people are more prone to getting severe very fast or getting prone to shifting from grade 1 to grade 2 or 3 very fast. So that's something to do with the genetic makeup, they say, and also with the environmental factors, and it is not just one thing. So the reason that we need to continue physical therapy is to at least avoid major deformities from happening and keeping you functionally able. That is going to be the main motto. Likewise, there is a study done where there is a control group where people have not taken physiotherapy at all, but they're active, and there are people who have taken physical therapy and they are also active. So the study which is told that the people who have taken physical therapy have been more functionally mobile and the severity was less compared to the people who have not taken physical therapy. So with this study, it concludes that movement is important and the right form of movement helps you from getting you even more severe. So that is the main intention of following up with physical therapy or any other therapies per.
So that's about physical pain and all, but we all know that physical pain leads to mental issues as well, and keeping patients motivated is a task in itself. It's just not about creating that environment. Like, sometimes we go in that environment and we feel motivated, but there are days when we don't want anything, no matter how inspiring or motivating that is. So how can you, like you said, there are days that are sunny and good, and there are days that are gloomy. So even in those gloomy days, anything that is related to the environmental change doesn't help. How do you keep the consistency of motivation alive in people?
Right, that's a good question. That's a great question, actually. So, like I said, everything needs to be holistic in approach. Not one person adds value to the patient. It's a group thing. So, likewise, it's also very important as a physical therapist to understand the psychology of the patient. So, let's say if the person is not in the right frame of mind, after a couple of sessions as well, it is very important for us to identify as to, are they depressed, are they anxious. So we all have a general or a basic questionnaire to see if the person has to go and see a counselor for a better, understanding of their body or their mental health that way. In case if there is something where in the questionnaire the person is falling in the category of needing a counselor, we always allow that person to, we talk to that person and ask them to go see a counselor. We keep it open so that they go see a counselor. That is one of it. But then we also encourage that person to get into groups or get into communities where, like-minded people of rheumatoid arthritis to help and talk and discuss about what's happening amongst their own, their life. And sometimes, depending on the grade or the severity of the rheumatoid arthritis, we also help in, if we have good number of rheumatoid arthritis patients, we take classes. Likewise, you also come across people of the same disease. So you both will be in the same mindset to understand each other. So group classes make people more motivated. Like again, since we are a social community, group classes help them not just physically motivated, they get competitive that way, but also mentally motivated because they went out their insecurities or whatever, so that they can, that makes them feel more positive around. So these are the things that we follow through. when we deal with somebody with chronic pain and other things like that.
But that's about adults, right? What about children? Like if you put a group of children together, they'll start
Yes.
playing with each other, forgetting their disease and forgetting their pain. But once
Yes.
that group is done and everything, they'll go back to their homes again, crying with their pains and being in their own scenario and in their own daydream world. But then
Yes.
even comprehending or assessing whether a child is anxious or depressed is extremely difficult as of the adult. Like there are no symptoms in a child of depression even if the child is in depression, and moreover a child being in depression is still a taboo in the society, right? So how do you
Yes.
differentiate between these two things? If for adults there are group classes, what would be there for children?
So children, I don't think there is any group class, because every child, they're open with going with every children that way. So majorly what happens is when a child is diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, they do not, because of the pain, they're not mobile. They confine themselves into the home.
Yeah.
They stop going outside.
Yeah.
So it is more important for us to imbibe the outside environment, imbibe the child into the outside atmosphere, irrespective of whatever disability that they could have. It's very important for us to take the child outside and to expose them to outside environment and to expose them to other kind of people, provided the child is familiar with that person and that person knows about the child as well. So the child is excited with going to a park. I think as parents, we tell them in what way do we, allow them to go to the park. Sometimes there will be environmental barriers, like let's say the child cannot move around, so the parents have to carry them or put them in the wheelchair. These are parks having a wheelchair access. And stuff like that is something which we help the parents to understand. And community awareness is something, it is very important for, as a parent, to keep the child in a playful atmosphere. That way the child can come out of it. And being as much as interactive with the child, allowing the child to talk about their insecurities and other things is very important, because since the child doesn't also understand what's going on with them, so it's more important for them to express it out, and that major role is played by the parents to giving them that comfort, telling that everything is okay. So that means the parents also have to go through certain, I wouldn't say counseling, but certain activities to enhance their parent-child relationship.
When we both did an online session, it was amazing and it really helped me with my pain. But then there are people who are still doubtful of whether it works or not. How do you clarify that doubt? Because I'm sure that, online therapies do work out well for them. How do you clear that doubt?
Well, like you said, there's this technology improving, and at least at this current scenario, where anybody going to a medical center is a task right now. Offering is going to be a trend right now. Also for the fact that it will not stop you from going to therapy. So the person, whoever is doing an online session, should also be well versed with how to go about online with a client. So it's not like somebody who is doing physically is suddenly shifting to online therapy. Doesn't work that way. There are ways of how to go about with an online session as well. So again, there are a lot of barriers as to where to keep the camera, how to go about it. So that's another task for the patient as well as the therapist. So it is more important for us to explain that prior and tell what can be achieved.
Yeah, I totally understand the importance of online sessions going on these days. So how can people reach out to you?
Yes. So currently I am practicing in Bangalore, India.
Okay.
So if there are any emergency cases, we take up prior to consultation an appointment. And then you can still take an online consultation. For more information, you can log on to my website, www.thepodmybody, mind.com. It's www.thebodyandmind.com.
So there you have it, people. Bhavna has helped me and is continuing helping me in several pain points of my rheumatoid arthritis journey, and there are several ways to reach out to her. You can go to her website and contact her as soon as possible in case you are experiencing any severe pain, and I am sure that she is going to help you as well as she has helped me. Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you so much for coming here and clearing out all of our doubts today.
Thank you, Himanshika. This is a wonderful opportunity this topic is the need of an hour.
Exactly.
Because all of us have gone through some kind of a pain, and it is very important for us to understand and how to go about it.
Exactly.
I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity, and also on trusting on me for your therapy.
Oh, I do
sessions.
totally trust you with my therapy sessions.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And in case you would have any more questions, people, just comment below, and I'm sure that Bhavna would be really happy to help you out with your doubts and queries. Until next time.